In the shadowed lands of Ravenloft, an iron-fisted ruler imposes order with a chilling, austere presence, a being that is unyielding, dangerous, and driven by an indomitable evil. Azalin Rex, the truest embodiment of a lich in D&D, who refuses to let Strahd, the dark powers, or even death itself stand in the way of his plans. Firin Zalhonen was born of noble blood on the third star day of Sunseb in 231, the second son of Earl Zalhonen, lord of the township of Nurl. Firin had no place in his father's house, and his older brother stood to inherit both the title and deeds of their father's land. Upon his 15th birthday, Firin chose to apprentice himself to a wizard named Quantarius. It is said that he gladly left his sire's house, cursing him with every breath. In magic, Firin excelled. He found a cold joy in wielding its great power, and for over 29 years he served Quantarius, learning the mystic arts. When he was released from his apprenticeship, he went to Raxus, and in that great city he honed his skill. Firin was in this city for several years when the warden of Nurl sent for him. His father had died while he'd been studying under Quantarius, although no word had ever been sent to him. His older brother had been ruling Nurl for the last 13 years. Now he too had died, having eaten himself into an oversized early grave. The warden begged Firin, as the only surviving Zalhonen heir, to return to Nurl and claim his inheritance. Firin accepted. The townsfolk took to calling him Azalin, meaning Wizard King in Old Oerdian. He was noted for his loyalty to Nurl and his harsh demands of its loyalty to him. The Azalin's word was considered as good as a written contract. Firin married Alessa in 290 CY. It was a loveless union born of politics. It took her 18 years to bear him a child, a son whom he named Eric. Alessa died birthing him, and she died cursing Firin. On Eric's 19th birthday, Firin had Eric publicly beheaded, wielding the sword himself. He publicly declared that his own son was unfit to rule in his stead. Legend has it after this event that a shadow lord of darkness came to Firin on the night of Eric's funeral and offered him a secret held by few mortals, the secret of lichdom. If this tale were true, 2 years would be required to complete the necromantic rituals, a task Firin gladly accepted. If he was successful, no one could ever tell, as he never revealed his true undead nature to his people, but they could sense the change. He publicly changed his title to Azalin, which the people had already been calling him for years. As a ruler, Azalin was noted for extremities. He was noted for his unshakable honor and for never breaking his word, regardless of the cost. He was intolerant of criminals, and his punishments were legendary throughout the realm. Nurl prospered under his iron grip, never suspecting that they harbored an undead monster. And in the year 342 CY, Azalin annexed the Tessar Valley where Nurl lay. To his credit, in the years that followed, Azalin fiercely defended his lands and people against the barbarians of the north and the Bone March. He gave his people the same unwavering loyalty he demanded from them. He then expanded his fief, taking more and more land. Inhabitants like dwarves and gnomes that took residence in these places rebelled immediately and were hideously punished for it. In the years that followed, he renounced his allegiance to the throne and marched against the city of Inspa in the year 391. His enemies were outraged at Azalin's incursions into their newly formed nation, but rather than send in an army against Azalin's armies, they hired a powerful band of mercenaries. They needed only kill one man. These men infiltrated Azalin's castle in an attempt to destroy the Lich, and despite his tremendous powers of magic, the mercenaries proved too much for him. Azalin fled, but they did not stop. For 2 days out of Nurl, the mercenaries were still hot on his trail, still chasing, still following Azalin. A mist arose in the morning, and thinking nothing of it, the Lich silently moved through the morning fog, where he utterly vanished from that place and entered into a new land, in a new reality, where he has remained ever since, and the people of Darkon call him Azalin, a twisted derivation of his true title. Azalin is a powerful lich. His body is a dried skeletal thing held together by loose magic. His eye sockets are black and empty, with pinpoints of light burning deep in their recesses. His nose, an empty skeletal hole that is shaped like an inverted heart. The flesh that still clings to his bones is withered, like that of a mummy. It is said in a century or so his skeleton will be fully bare. When he wants to emphasize his undead nature, Azalin wears just a cape, with a burial shroud girding his loins and a few pieces of jewelry, such as rings, armbands, or a necklace. The cape is usually black with blood-red trim. He leaves it open to display his withered body. On his head, he wears a black iron crown, with a single large yellow gem adorning the crown's central spike. When he wants to appear less shocking, Azalin dons garments that conceal most of his undead body. Gloves that cover his hands, and a high-necked shirt hides his throat and jaw. The garments are always of the finest materials, suitable for the ruler of Ravenloft's largest domain. And of course, he still dons his crown. On many occasions, Azalin prefers to look like a normal, living creature. He disguises himself with a powerful illusion. He can choose any appearance, even that of a woman or a demi-human close to his own height. His voice and odor change to fit whatever illusion he wishes to present. The only thing he cannot conceal is his aura of netherworld cold. Because of it, he never gets too close to those he wishes to deceive. When not wrapped in illusion, Azalin smells of death. The odor is difficult to describe, a mixture of mold, dust, and sour decay. Yet anyone who has smelled death before will instantly recognize it. No matter which form he assumes, Azalin is always surrounded by the aura of absolute cold. The aura itself is not harmful, but even creatures that are native to cold climates will shiver when he is standing nearby. Those mists were part of the dark powers of Ravenloft, and they carried Azalin away into the lands of Barovia, a familiar Ravenloft setting as it houses and is ruled by Strahd von Zarovich. Azalin was trapped in Ravenloft, and though his physical powers were greater than Strahd's, the mage still feared the vampire Strahd. Azalin was mystified by Strahd's connection to the land. He believed that without Strahd, Barovia, and all within it, including himself, would cease to exist. Under this great duress, Azalin became Strahd's servant. He loathed every moment. He vowed that if he ever won his freedom, he would never swear fealty to any creature living or dead again. Though the relationship was tumultuous, they worked together. At Strahd's behest, Azalin taught the master vampire great sorceries. In addition, Azalin spent much of his time investigating the mysterious mists surrounding Barovia. Strahd wanted him to find a way out of the pocket universe, and Azalin, yearning for this same escape, willingly complied. Azalin desperately wants to escape from Ravenloft. It is not just his trapped nature or the fact that he has to share a domain with Strahd that he wants to leave. His ultimate torment, as long as he is trapped within the misty borders of Ravenloft, he cannot learn any new magic. The ultimate torment for a lich. The module From the Shadows in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is Azalin's first attempt to escape. It blends into the other module, Roots of Evil. These adventures have a lot of possibilities of how they go down, including time traveling to new worlds of Barovia, and Azalin and Strahd attempting to leave. But in summary, in the autumn of 579, a place called Mordant appeared to the west of Barovia. Legends claim that Mordant's sudden appearance was somehow connected to Azalin and Strahd, who were attempting to open a portal to another world to escape. More Dentish folklore does claim that both men visited their lands where they became embroiled with the fate of a human alchemist and his apparatus, a terrible artifact said to be able to rend and exchange mortal souls. Whether or not these tales contain any truth, Azalin and Strahd did finally end their fractious alliance soon after. If you play through these modules, you could play as the adventurers who foil these plans. And essentially all goes back to as it was before, with Azalin and Strahd back in the Ravenloft setting. For Azalin, this was the final straw. Shortly thereafter, he left Barovia forever. He simply wanted to leave, and the mists parted to reveal the vast domain of Darkon. And so Azalin was a ruler once more. In 3rd edition, we also find out that Azalin's ascension in Darkon was not so easy. Darkon has a long history, long before Azalin ever got there. And before he got there, it was ruled by an individual named Ruthless. Nobles conspired to have Darkon assassinated and somehow recruited the outlander wizard Azalin. With these conspirators' aid, Azalin entered Avernus alone. No one save Azalin knows what happened next, but Darkon was never seen again. Its nobles were soon invited to a masquerade ball at Castle Avernus. When all the guests had arrived, their new king presented himself. Azalin Rex demonstrated his arcane powers, slaying those present who refused to recognize his claim to the throne. His rule was then uncontested. Azalin spent the first months of his reign raising an army. He originally formed a group called the Kargat to lead his forces into Barovia to repay Strahd for his kindnesses. The impending war, however, never grew beyond a handful of raids or border skirmishes. Azalin abandoned this petty feud with Strahd to focus on the new threat and recruited mages to solidify his control over the regime. Strahd never retaliated and Azalin's war efforts faltered. Ultimately, the two leaders simply lost interest in each other. Barovia and Darkon have never established a formal diplomatic relationship, but the natural barrier between them allowed them to ignore each other quite effectively. But Ravenloft never lets you forget your past. As he took up his former mantle as ruler, a crypt in his new castle already had an inhabitant, the spirit of his son, Eric, constantly reminding Azalin of his crimes but unwilling to condemn him for them. And even worse, even though Azalin moved into this new plane, his magical powers were still frozen, crippling his abilities to learn or study new means of escape. Azalin then began ruling Darkon from his castle Avernus, a collection of several massive towers sitting atop a rocky hill. The slain city of Necropolis is distantly visible from the castle's highest balconies. Only scavenging birds fly above Avernus. The moment the shadow of any other bird falls upon the castle's stones, the creature drops dead from the sky. Avernus houses Azalin's court, dungeons, and numerous arcane laboratories. Darkonians believe a gateway to an otherworldly abyss can be found deep within the castle's dungeons. The torment of Azalin's prisoners usually raises Avernus' sinkhole of evil to rank 3 or 4. When Azalin wishes to seal his domain, an army of soldiers and skeletons 20 creatures deep claw up from the earth at the borders. He also has a secret police that run around Darkon. All Darkonians know of the existence of Azalin's notorious secret police, called the Kargat. Many even believe that they know enough to be able to identify Kargat agents when they see them. Very few people are aware of the Kargat's true nature, however. Only Azalin himself knows how many Kargat agents are active in Darkon and amongst nearby domains. Roughly half of all the Kargat are low-ranking humans and non-humans recruited from Darkon's back alley and orphanages as adolescents. The Kargat's leadership comprises intelligent undead exclusively, vampires and ghosts. Azalin uses his undead dominion to ensure their loyalty. The middle ranks are made up of lycanthropes and other shape changers. Advancement through the Kargat often depends as much on what you are as on whom you know. As ruler of Darkon, Azalin still desires power above all else. The dark powers, when they whisked him away to Ravenloft, did give him tremendous power, but again, they paralyzed him from learning anything else. Azalin can further refine magical principles he understood before becoming the Lord of Darkon, but is unable to learn anything new. Whenever he witnesses another wizard cast a spell that he does not know, Azalin burns with jealousy. Azalin has maintained his facade of humanity so zealously that even if his subjects are presented with evidence of his undead nature, most will reject it as preposterous. Most see him as a despotic tyrant, evil but human, who uses dark magic to extend his life. Azalin's closest advisors are fully aware of his undead nature, but all of them are monsters in their own right. They consider Azalin a harsh but fair sovereign, the proverbial iron fist in a velvet glove. Azalin encourages his subjects to debase themselves as a method of societal control and to soothe his own battered ego. He throws depraved, seasonal masquerades for the nobility to flaunt his superiority. He toys with allegiances of his servants, seeing how far they will sink to curry his favor. Azalin has honed torment to an art form. He dedicates years of planning to plots, and his long-term goals often strain mortal comprehension. His thirst for power is both his driving force and, of course, his greatest failing. Once he sets his sights on achieving a goal, nothing can dissuade him from his path. As Azalin pursues a given scheme over the years, he often becomes so obsessed with its completion that he may ignore minor flaws that might appear. His foes have often used such tiny oversights to undermine his ultimate goals. And although he cannot learn new spells, he possesses a remarkable grasp on other details. He knows who has visited his kingdom in the past and who is visiting Darkon today. He can identify any Darkonian by name on sight. The years spent merged with Darkon have greatly enhanced Azalin's knowledge of his subjects. He can now peer into the memories of anyone within his borders. His son Eric's spirit still actively haunts his father, omnipresent, but usually manifesting only when Azalin wishes to be alone. Light to his father's darkness, Eric acts as counsel, trying to open Azalin's eyes to the self-destructive evil of his machinations. Azalin loathes Eric's visits. He sees the ghost's pleas as nothing but a distraction from his goals. On Eric, in one of the modules from 1st edition, we can get Azalin's own thoughts from when he was still fearing Zalhonin. He writes, "Eric is a disappointment, flesh of my flesh, the only fruit of my seed, my son is nevertheless unfit. I tried to teach him how to rule. The people must obey the rules. It is the natural order of things. Those who do not obey must be punished swiftly and publicly, so that all will know the consequences of disobedience. The common folk are like children. They must be constantly cared for, lest they run astray. They must be disciplined regularly. Eric was always too soft-hearted. He wanted to give food to the hungry and clothes to the poor. His judgment was based upon forgiveness, not the rule of law. Eric is unfit to rule Nurl. I had no choice. I have seen 96 winters, and there will be no other heirs in the Zalhonin line. If I were to die before him, he would spoil the people and bring down all the fruits of my labor. I had to execute him. Animals in the wild always kill the young of their litter that are unfit. I simply did the same. I did do the right thing. I did do the right thing." Obviously, Azalin was always excessively evil, even from when he was a human, but it's clear from this journal entry that he wrote, he already held remorse for the killing of his own son, and he only did so that his son would not take rulership after him. That decision and his actions plagued him in life, and they will plague him in the afterlife for all of eternity. Azalin is the core of many more large events in Ravenloft, the first of which is the Grand Conjunction. According to most accounts, the Vistani seer Hyskosa first recorded his prophecy predicting a cataclysmic Grand Conjunction in the year 735. Although Vistani time does not flow as the time for others do, and the copies of Hyskosa's Hexad have been found dating back at least a century. Azalin found and learned of these omens, and saw them as an opportunity. Still driven by his outlander desire to escape back to his own world, Azalin manipulated events over the next 5 years to fulfill the prophecies and bring this Grand Conjunction to premature fruition. This Grand Conjunction was triggered in 740 and threatened to turn Ravenloft inside out. As the Land of Mists was racked by tremors and entire domains dissolved into vapor, the mists of Ravenloft spread throughout the material plane to doom countless outlander worlds. Fortunately, Azalin's manipulation of the natural order of events actually turned out to weaken the Grand Conjunction, enough to allow a band of adventurers to cause its collapse. The material plane was saved, but the realm of dread did not escape unscathed. Core domains were wrenched into new positions, rivers altered, stars ever changed their pattern, and of course, Azalin's attempt at escape failed. But in a roundabout way, he did save himself and that of Ravenloft. And the final and latest attempt by Azalin was during a time called the Fall of Kings. And after a decade of experimentation, Azalin completed a magical artifact that would empower him with the energy of thousands of stolen souls, allowing him to finally burst free from the realm of dread. And at the stroke of midnight on the night of the winter solstice in the year 750, during a religious ceremony called the Requiem, Azalin activated the artifact in the heart of Darkon's largest city. A wave of negative energy burst from the artifact and expanded all across Darkon. Every living creature within a mile was instantly slain and animated into undeath, and a spiritual shroud settled over the kingdom. Azalin vanished and was presumed slain. His throne remained empty for years as local nobles squabbled for control. and a spectral entity claiming to be death itself laid claim. Azalin was not the only public figure to fall. The aged Rudolf van Richten had already vanished without a trace in the spring of 750, and enjoying 8 years of peaceful retirement in the autumn of 752, a mass of living, shrieking shadows smashed into the keep of Sithicus's ruler, destroying him. Lastly, in recent months, mystics and seers have even claimed that a remote cluster, a land said to have been locked in endless warfare, has been utterly destroyed by forces unknown. As each crown fell, the fear of the populace grew. More and more people gave credence to doomsayers and the prophecy of the coming ultimate darkness. Shortly after Azalin's apparent demise, Vlad Drakov invaded Darkon for the first time in decades. The undead still rose to defeat his armies, and legends emerged to claim that Azalin was not truly gone. As the years passed, more and more Darkonians received irregular visions of their fallen leader as he struggled to return from beyond. Death also seemed to sense Azalin's presence and dispatched undead minions to stop the wizard's return, but to no avail. Late in the summer of this year, Azalin triumphantly returned to the world. He now claims that his attempt to stop the Requiem, supposedly an invasion of the dead into the world of the living, physically trapped him in the Grey Realm, the land of the dead, until he found his way home. But he returned to find his kingdom in shambles, and has publicly sworn to restore Darkon to its former glory. But we find the truth of this later on. Officially, Azalin claims that he had halted an incursion of the dead in the Requiem, the next 5 years wandering in the Grey Realm seeking a way home. Apparently, according to the Ravenloft Gazetter Volume 2, this is a blatant lie. In fact, the Requiem's energy waves scattered Azalin's essence to the far corners of Darkon, literally merging him with every life force in his kingdom. As Azalin's diffused mind stirred, the people of Darkon sometimes subconsciously sensed his struggle for thought. Meanwhile, other dreamers sensed death reaching out to devour Azalin's spirit, one soul at a time. After 3 years, Azalin recovered enough of himself to think. He contacted his few trusted allies through their dreams to deliver the plans of his own salvation. There was the creation of an object called a soul focus, which served as a phylactery for Azalin. Unfortunately for Azalin, death could sense the drowning dreams as well, learning of Azalin's plans as quickly as Azalin's allies did, and in the following months, tales spread that 3 hideous undead riders were on the move, leaving swaths of destruction in their wake. It was soon agreed that these entities were the mythic horsemen, the emissaries of death, and a sure omen that the hour of ascension would soon occur. The horsemen rode throughout Darkon seeking to destroy Azalin, but Azalin ultimately triumphed, as he quickly set his house back in order, smiting the horsemen easily and preventing their foul energies from flowing back to death. Azalin solidified his power anew, just as he had done upon defeating Darkon. Darkon now looks to be on the road to recovery. And that is where we find ourselves at the end of Azalin's story. Many attempts to leave foiled, but over time, he has grown in power, more, and more, and it is even rumored that he has slightly broken his curse. For he can learn new magic if it has to do with some magic that he knew very well in life. It will still take much more time and effort than any normal person, but Azalin does have infinite time. And if it's shown that he can even chip through it a bit, it is promising that there is more to come. And so he suffers this frustrating existence under the curse of the dark powers, and he has defied all those who sought to control him, Strahd von Zarovich, death itself, and finally making a chip at the dark powers' curse. His power has grown far beyond the reaches of what most can conceive of in Ravenloft, and the people of Darkon remain fiercely loyal, knowing their ruler is as unbreakable as the domain he commands. But Azalin will never give up. It is his blessing and his curse. But he has gotten close, dangerously close, many times to escaping the mists of Ravenloft. Who's to know if he will ever be successful, but one thing is certain. Whatever plane or domain he sets foot on next is doomed to fall under the shadow of Azalin Rex.